I could have served up to 5 years in prison. So it was very, very, very frightening. It was very depressing. I had to go and receive counseling to help me to cope with it. It was horrendous.
A jury quickly found her not guilty because, as it turned out, disabled voters had filled out the official forms requesting her help.
They had the handcuffs around my back, my hands to the back. I couldn't get into the car with them like that. I was in excruciating pain.
The New York Times wrote that Olivia's case made Brian Kemp a pioneer of present-day voter suppression.
The young lady that I was with at the time, she told me, she said, "Miss Olivia, I don't even want to vote. After all of this, I don't want to vote anymore. I don't want to do it." And I had to beg her and explain to her that that's what they're doing it for, is to cause people to be afraid to exercise the right to vote.
From his very first year as Georgia's voting chief, Brian Kemp literally ordered armed seizures. He sent the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Georgia's own version of the FBI, to Quitman, Georgia, to arrest 10 newly elected members of the school board. The first Black members on the board, arresting teachers, including 2 PhDs. Kemp accused them of stuffing tampered ballots into mailboxes. That same old accusation as in 2000 Mules. Kemp had them paraded in handcuffs and orange suits like they were terrorists at Guantanamo. Local journalist George Boston Rhines has closely tracked the case.
I'm George Boston Rhines, and I'm in Quitman, Georgia. And I am immediately, just got down here. These are the Quitman 10. This is what I do.
After 4 years of prison over their heads, the Quitman 10 were acquitted of every charge.
So much stress was on those people. Lula Smart even considered taking her own life.
With all the indictment that I had, in my mind, I thought, well, if I just commit suicide, this will be over.
Another suffered from lupus.
Latasha Head, she died, and I interviewed her father, and he said that he believed that his daughter's death was a result of the stress and pressure brought about by Secretary of State Brian P. Kemp.
Rhines explained that the persecution of the Quitman 10 brought up traumatic memories of the lynching of 12 Black men in 1918, what is called the Week of Terror. When Mary Turner raised her voice about the execution of her husband by vigilantes, they came after her.
Oh, wow.
Where are we? Can you tell me what we're about to do?
This is the old Brooks County Jail. This is where all of the equipment, and this is where all of the men that were arrested during that Week of Terror in May of 18 would have been housed in this jail before they was lynched. This is my first time ever coming into this place. I've heard some horror stories about this place. In May of 1918, Mary Turner was lynched. They took her, she was 9 months pregnant, turned her upside down, riddled her body with bullets. A white mob member took a hog knife, ripped over her abdomen, and out fell an 8-month-old fetus. And when that fetus fell to the ground, the white mob member took the heel of his boot and crushed that baby's head.
Even today, the memory of Mary Turner is a political battlefield. The plaque commemorating her was shot up so often, it had to be removed.
getting up every day, working as hard as we can to make sure that Stacey Abrams is not going to be our governor or your next president. What a great night to be in Georgia, everybody.
He was a builder, worked hard, and started from scratch. He's a self-made man.
At least that's the story he sells, that he rose from a humble little cabin in the woods.
Their 3 daughters grew up here.
I need to get on that tractor right now and cut that pasture right there.
That little house, it was one more gift from his father-in-law, insurance mogul state rep Bob Argo. A Georgia political powerhouse. We discovered a trove of documents telling a very different story from Kemp's invented history. They reveal that Brian Porter Kemp comes from a long line of privilege and property. His millions arrived early, yet no one seems to ask, how did some kid out of college end up with a big construction company? The old-fashioned way. He joined his daddy's and grandpa's well-connected company. They cashed in early on building student housing. To make way for their buildings, the land had to be cleared of the black homeowners on it.
Front door would have been right along in here. Mm-hmm. And you opened the door and you walked into what we call the front room, because it didn't have 3 rooms. And all of us children slept in the middle room. We loved it. We would wake up on Saturdays mornings and whatever's on our minds, and we'd end up in pillow fights. Uh-huh. Pillow fights until our daddy said, cut it out. And the men in the community built us a house, not knowing that it was an urban renewal zone. Urban renewal, it was burnt down. On the family survey form, it said the fire department training burned it down.
Wait, the fire department used your new house as training for the fire department by burning your new house down?
Some houses were burned down, some was pushed down.
Or bulldozed them with just hours' notice. How Brian Kemp always ended up with the golden shovel is explained by 4-term Congressman John Barrow. Barrow served on a local housing commission with Kemp.
While he was on that committee, he was building multifamily units that exploited these loopholes, that actually did some of the things we were explicitly trying to do away with. He for example, would come up with fake windows. I mean, there are all kinds of things like that were going on. For some people, it's very difficult to think that there's anything wrong with something that puts $1 in their pocket.
Playing fast and loose with the facts helped Kemp's political rise.
I'm a small business owner.
It began with his run for state senate in a swing district with many black voters. So Kemp ran ads claiming his family fought segregation.
Former Senator Julian Cox, Brian Kemp's grandfather, boldly voted to integrate the University of Georgia. Those are the values that Brian Kemp was raised on.
When the record was completely different, they came up with a scheme that Mr. Cox supported, a scheme to essentially privatize the public school. State-sponsored, state-supported privatization of segregation.
Al Pearson taught at the University of Georgia Law School.
By the time 2010 came around, he had statewide aspirations with the connection with the Argo family. He had some access route into politics. You know, it fell into Kemp's lap, and he became Secretary of State and then ran statewide as an incumbent. Going into the 2010 election, incumbent Secretary of State, a woman named Karen Handel, she resigned the office of Secretary of State to run as governor on the theory that it would be a conflict of interest to be supervising elections statewide while you're also a candidate.
Unlike the prior voting chief, Kemp shockingly refused to resign while running for governor against Stacey Abrams. Kemp's unleashing Pam Reardon and the posse of vigilante voter challenges ran into a problem. Their first attempt to challenge voters was rejected by local elections boards. So Kemp added an extraordinary provision to SB 202. Kemp gave himself the right to remove any local elections commissioner that rejects the challenges. Helen Butler runs the voting rights organization that was founded by the Reverend Joseph Lowry. she was placed on the elections board for her expertise.
I was a member of the Board of Elections. I had been on the board since 2010, and I was on until June of 2021.
She is Mrs. Vote in Georgia. She's the one who taught me everything I know about voter registration and voter mobilization.
Civil rights attorney Gerald Griggs, famed for bringing R. Kelly to justice, is now president of the Georgia NAACP.
And they removed her?
Yes.
Why?
They removed her because, again, the provisions of SB 202 allow for a state takeover of local election boards. Another reason why we're suing.
They wanted people that were not as vocal as we were, wanted to make sure that they had total control of the Board of Elections.
Helen asked questions, and when Kemp didn't answer, she and reporter Palast won a federal court order forcing Kemp to open his voter purge files. Griggs was their attorney.
So you think it was retribution?
I mean, they won't say it's retribution, but what other reason would you take over that election board and remove Helen?
They wanted to make sure to silence our voice, because the Board of Elections, as I said, they determine who gets registered, when they get registered, how they get registered, whether your vote counts, when it counts, how it counts, and we get to certify the election.
So who are they that you said they didn't want?
My county board of commissioners, who happen to be majority Republican.
Removing skeptical experts from elections boards lets Kemp, once again, choose his own voters and count his own votes. And dangerously, it opens the door to overturning the presidential vote in 2024.
Trump said to the Secretary of State, find me 11,000 votes. How do you find those 11,000 votes?
Well, to find those 11,000 votes, you either have to have the members of the boards of elections who will not certify the elections and say, no, I think we can disqualify these amount of votes. And to do that, you'd have to have those local boards of elections that would be willing to not certify, and to have the state not certify as well, because these counties are saying that there's problems. Well, I'm not going to be a party to that. Whatever the voter intent was, that's what it is.
Griggs suggested that the Justice Department shoot back at the vigilantes with the post-Civil War Ku Klux Klan Act, which makes intimidating a voter a prison time offense.
You said the Ku Klux Klan law, 1871. We're in 2022.
Yes.
Okay, it's well over, it's a century and a half.
But we're in the middle of the new Jim Crow 2.0. And so we have to use the same means that we used against black codes and Jim Crow to now deal with Jim Crow 2.0, because there is a feeling in this country that certain people, by mere race or ethnicity or gender, are not as fundamentally American and thus not entitled to the protections of American civil rights. So we have to use those civil rights protections to continue to grow access to the franchise, which is why we've used a code that's almost 130-something years old.
And so what we see is a consistency with Kemp, creating mechanisms to actually lift up the violence that has been inflicted on African-American communities. We can even talk about the signing of Senate Bill 202 that was passed shortly after the election in Georgia, where we were able to put these two new senators, an African-American and a Jewish man, in office, after we were able to, the state flipped to be a Democratic state. That what we saw immediately coming out of that was a legislative session where they passed this bill, Senate Bill 202. In that bill, it is filled with violence.
For what? Under arrest for what?
And at the same time, right outside of the room, when a duly elected official who had every right to be at the signing of a bill.
Why are you arresting her?
She actually was dragged out as if she was a criminal, as if she wasn't human. If you go back to the bill signing, what you will see Governor Kemp sitting under a painting of a plantation. What is more violent than the image of a plantation where people were killed, maimed, stolen, sold, dehumanized, right? And flanked by all white men, as if that is in any form or fashion representative of the state of Georgia.
Kemp's family, few know, had several such plantation houses, but that old cotton-picking wealth has transformed into a company Kemp calls Plantation Partners LLC, part of a portfolio of private forests. He'll cut down these trees for Koch Industries to turn it all into toilet paper.
The governor values this little toilet paper farm at $2.2 million. He's got a lot of others.
Kemp's family was once one of the largest plantation owners in Georgia. Roswell Mills was the manufacturing heart of the Confederate war machine. Where Kemp's ancestors made the